and you get in there with your wife and you go, ah! They don't need to hear it. Just my thoughts. What are your thoughts? What do you want to throw to this one?
I think, just from my personal experience itself, that what happens is when you get around people who aren't Christian and they seem more real than Christians are, that's the biggest turnoff to religion. So I think, be careful of caring more about how people see you and your family, and don't care more about that than your child.
Yeah.
And, just be real, meet them where they're at, like Jesus did. That's huge, huge, huge. And when they express that they don't believe or they're not sure, things like that, don't overreact.
Yeah.
Stay calm. It's okay. It's good, because you want them to wrestle with that so they can stand on their own feet.
Well, you want them to wrestle with that while you're still in the picture,
Exactly.
not when they're off on their own. This is a great place to have these wrestles.
And
Let's
so
wrestle.
Yes, and to
Yeah.
not, and to be able to do that means you have to take yourself out of the picture and
Yeah.
what you need from them. It's not
good.
about you.
Yeah, that's very good. That's great. Yeah.
Back to the worship thing. I don't have no idea where I'm going with this. My oldest and I were talking about just singing, and we've started singing "Goodness of God."
Oh, isn't that a great song?
And so,
Is that okay? Can we sing that?
fantastic song. But she made reference of, what's the difference from that song to all the songs that we've sang for bajillions of years, and she made reference to the emotional feelings that she gets from that, and what you've also made reference to camp. And there's that buzz at camp. I did that. I felt that. But why is that not in our worship with the people we see and are around all the time? We sing it in the truck together, and we're belting it, and we're really singing.
Yeah.
And then here, it's like we can't really go there. And so that's something that
will be tomorrow,
if a
though.
14
We're all going to be there. It's true.
if a 15-year-old recognizes that,
Sure.
what a letdown
Yeah.
Yeah.
on the back end of it.
Sure.
And so I think that's the responsibility of
Yeah.
all of those, even in front of the parents and the parents.
Yeah.
To
We get to
state
set
it's
that
okay.
environment. Yeah.
It's okay to sing out and really, really sing.
Yeah.
And
Just so you know, singing is one of your most powerful evangelistic tools. I believe it. It's one of the most. People either going to think, "Whoa, this place really needs a piano," or they're going to think, "I wouldn't put a piano in here for nothing. This is amazing." I want the
That's
latter.
true.
I want the latter. Yeah. All right. Anybody else got anything on this one? Just my thoughts. And again, this kind of gets back to the parent. You control the message. You control the message. Because even in the little more challenging church situations, we can still control that message. Does that make sense? So that's kind of on us. So that'd be my suggestions. All right, we're going to switch gears from parent-child relationship now. This was a good question. Mental health of teens. I would like to get, if you would allow me, mental health. What are we talking about here? Anybody, doesn't mean it's your kid. What are we talking about mental health issues
I think
here?
teenagers are dealing with anxiety, depression, self-harm, all the above to the maximum.
Okay? And actually they are.
Like true.
Yeah, there's a ton of that. We have counseling services for the kids on campus. They have so many sessions, see a therapist, and they're free to have more, and a ton of them are taking that. And also at camp, close to 25% of our kids coming to camp are on some sort of medication. We've even had younger kids on Prozac, of all things. Like, oh my word, that is very powerful. Not sure what the circumstance is on that, but yeah. So insecurities, anxieties, anything else? Okay. And how they relate. Okay. All right. Anything else? Okay. Then with that in mind, here's what we got to keep in mind. Children need our guidance. And one of our greatest challenges as parents is helping them navigate a world that is scary. And so we have to help them get out of comfort zones. We have to help them navigate even with their own challenges. Okay, you may have this challenge, but we've got to learn how to function even with this challenge. And so it's very important. It's very important that we help our children through the hard things. Now, one of the things that we definitely need to keep in mind, depending on what the mental health challenge is, we need to find out if there's anything in their life that could be eliminated that may be a cause. For example, here's one of the biggest causes to kids' anxieties today. Anybody want to guess what it is? Cell phones. Cell phones. Well, how did they get the cell phone? You and I gave it to them. And just because everybody else has one does not mean they have to have one. I think one of the easiest ways to kind of put this in perspective is we need to treat a cell phone like a car. You have to be at a certain age before you're able to operate a car. And before you're even at that age to operate a car, you have to go through some training before you can even get behind the seat, the wheel of that car. And then even then, before you're going to go out on your own, you're going to navigate it with mom and dad for a while. There's a lot of build-up. There's a lot of parameters. There's a lot of boundaries before you're just let loose. And even when you have the ability to drive on your own, there's still a limit, right? I think that's very important for us to keep in mind because the cell phones have greatly increased the insecurities and the anxieties of our kids. Yes, sir. Yeah.
If it says anything at all, Steve Jobs didn't let his kids have technology. He didn't let them have iPhones or iPads.
Yeah, and he wasn't the only one in the tech world to do that because they recognized the addiction and the challenge of it. And so we control that. We control that. Also, anxieties can come from the friends that they're hanging around, their associates. And it may be that some of those environments need to be restricted. The deal is the insecurity, the anxiety could just be a symptom of something that's driving that in some way. And we need to probe and try to figure out what that is. But at the same time, they've got to learn how to maneuver in this. Let me just say here, this is true. Every parent has to parent your own child. And although I mentioned medication, I'm not anti-medication. You need to sit down with your doctor, with your children, and determine what's best for your kids. And you need to navigate that on your own. I would certainly encourage you to do your research on that and give that a lot of homework. But we have to recognize it's a hard time for our kids right now in so many ways. And what they need is more of us, not less of us. And so we need to be involved in those processes. I think when it comes to fear and anxieties, we've got to help them maneuver through that. Because it's easy to cave and just let them do nothing. That can't be an option. That can't be an option. Again, I'm a big fan of camp, so that's just my opinion. But one of the things I loved about camp was they had to adjust with something new every year. A new cabin, a new a group of people that they're around, a new, everything's always new. You had to learn how to adapt. You had to learn how to make friends. You had to learn to rise above your insecurities. It's mind-boggling to me how many kids I know right now that are in their 20s that still are not driving. I don't know if you know many of those. We just seem to know a lot of those. And how many kids are at home. I'm sorry, that's not an option. That can't be the default, that we let them do nothing. It's our role to help them navigate through this process. So if it is truly an emotional issue, a medical issue, we need to be seeing doctors and following doctors' advice. You have got to follow doctors' advice. I think I told you just last night when I was talking about the young man who's got some issues going on, and I get it, and his dad's all embarrassed. One of the things I told Dad, I was like, Dad, are y'all seeing a psychiatrist? He goes, well, we see it. I said, no, you have got to go see a psychiatrist. You have got to see a psychiatrist. I think his medicine is all, wonky, and they did. They went and saw a psychiatrist. They got medication changed, and he wanted me to know, hey, he's doing much better. Awesome. You got to take advantage of that. And if it is that kind of an issue, you need to do that. You need to do that. But you also need to recognize what are the triggers that are leading to that. And those things that you can pull away, cell phones, negative friends, or you need to make some adjustments, but isolation is not going to fix it. Just saying, okay, you can do nothing is not an option. You have to learn how to maneuver through these insecurities. You have to learn how to handle this where you are. Some kids are ADHD. Very popular. That is a challenge. I get it. I get it. But we've got to learn how to help them figure it out and move on their own. And that's going to take some time, and that's going to take a lot of conversation, but it's also going to have to take us gently pushing at times too. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Can I just add that being willing to know you yourself may be struggling with things and you may need your own help, and seeking out great spiritually minded professionals, therapists, and realizing when your children need that, when they may need medication, when they may need one more than the other, and learning how to stand beside them and walk through that.
Yeah.
I think we were probably all raised in around the same generation, and that's not what we were given. As we were growing up, things were swept under the rug. We didn't deal with them. We pretended like they no longer existed. And having, 2 college-age kids and one still at home, I've lived through some of this and lived through a lot of trauma in my own life and home life and loss. And my kids have had to walk through that with me, and they've had to watch me grow through it, and they've had to walk through some of that themselves. And therapists, when you can find a really good one, they should not be frowned upon.
Nope.
Ever.
No. And it is nice that our world is adapting more to understanding mental health. We've come a long ways, but yeah. And we don't need to be, don't be worried about stigmas. Again, this is peer pressure. I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. We refuse to do that. I got to do me, you got to do you, and I got to help you do you. But we have to help our kids navigate this. And let me just go back to cell phones just real quick. I just can't tell you enough how cell phones are hurting our kids and our adults. Pornography. Listen, parents, if you've got a son and you've given him a phone, you've introduced him to pornography. Evil finds a way, even when they're not technically trying to find it. And we got to be on top of that. The temptation to communicate with people, you shouldn't communicate with. It's so great in a hidden world. I despise Snapchat. I despise anything that has a premise, it'll be gone. It won't be gone. It won't be gone. And I'm dealing with a young man right now who's having a lot of struggles from a Snapchat from many years ago that is still haunting his life. It doesn't go away. And we need to be mindful. That is a dangerous world, so treat it like a car. Treat it like a car. And if your kid's just a weird one, they'll be fine. They'll be sane. You know, just be mindful of that. And so, yeah, that's something you really need to get into. Mental health, I would just be very, very cognizant if it is a medical issue that you seek medical attention with your team. But you need to sit down and have these discussions because their friends are dealing with it, even if maybe yours aren't. You know, and so it's real. It's real. All right. Any other thoughts on this one? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Diet, exercise, and sleep.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that is true. Diet, exercise, and sleep. Most people, if you don't have enough sleep, boy, that'll mess you up real bad. In fact, the first thing most counselors say to people right off the bat, you been sleeping lately? You know, what's your diet like? Yeah. So diet, exercise, and sleep, very important. Simple things. Okay. All right, well, thank y'all. If you want to talk about that one more personally or one-on-one, we'd be more than happy to sit down and spend some time with you. Oh, yeah, social media. Did I tell y'all how I feel about social media? Treat it like a car. Treat it like a car. So, and that's one thing that makes camp so great. And the kids loved it. It is a no cell phone zone. It is nice. All right, friends and dating. How do you handle clicks? I don't know. How do you handle clicks? Help me out here. No, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to tell you this is the mess of the camp director perspective. All right? Anytime, in any setting, anywhere that you get kids together, you're going to have cliques. In fact, I would say, anytime, anywhere you get adults together, you're going to have cliques. Raise your hand if you sit in the same seat every Sunday. Come on. Yes, you do. You sit with your people in your zone, in your place, and if somebody's there, you give them the look, are you moving? Because I don't want to have to ask you. It's, you know, or they, hey, here's what we do. Here's what we do. We did this at Glen Springs every year, and we've started it at Valrico. March is March Madness. Nobody's allowed to sit in their regular seat. And so what families start doing is, okay, everybody here in our quadrant, we're all going to move over here together. We are on to you. You can't do that. Because here's the deal. Understand this about cliques. Cliques is part of human nature. You're always going to find the people that you feel more comfortable with. That's human nature. So if you get a bunch of kids together, guess what's going to happen? They're going to click. So here's how we handle it at camp. So I got 300 plus kids coming into camp. Guess what I know I'm going to have? Cliques. So we have a plan from the very beginning to bust up cliques. And so it just comes from the very start. Who's new? Who's never been here? We celebrate those that are new. We celebrate those who have been here. We reiterate and reiterate all the time. No man left behind. No man left behind. Everybody's included here, and you have to keep reminding of that. And we do everything that we can in activities to bust them up and make them mingle with others. All right? But that's going to be a part of life. That's going to be a part of life. And so you have to be very proactive. So in any kind of communal activity, I would say even in Bible class or even you have to be mindful of that and be ready for it. So I put this directly on parents and teachers. Parents and teachers need to be ready to make sure that we're ready to bust this up. Now, having said that, all right, we want our kids to find their people. And there's some people we don't want our kids around. Fair? So this is going to require also some conversation as well. We got accused years later after our kids were grown that we were cliquish. Your kids only da-da-da-da. You know, it's like, well, first of all, part of that really wasn't true. But then part of it was, I didn't want my kids around your kids that much. Yeah, they knew they had to, and I know that sounds kind of forceful, but they had to at church, or they had to in this setting, and there's community. But hey, when it came to really becoming tight friends, I don't know if that's, and unfortunately, where those kids are, I probably made the best choice. I get that. So there is a little bit of a catch-22 here that we need to be mindful of. And we're all going to be very self-conscious if our kids left out. Fair? So we need to all be mindful of not leaving anybody out, but it may also be an examination. Maybe we need to look at ourselves and our kids in that regard. But having said all that, to kind of set this up, here's some things really to keep in mind. Kids are going to model their parents. And so if we want to make sure all the kids are getting around to one another, we have to get around to one another. And one of the ways that you can do this, parents, is you can make sure you invite others to your house that aren't exactly in your friend bucket. Maybe you need to put some more friends in your friend bucket and get a bigger bucket, all right? And so you model to your children how to work a room and how to get to everybody. Another thing that we did, this was actually just a couple of years ago, we noticed that we had this challenge at church. We had a clique issue, and we knew we had differences. And so we decided we're going to have all the kids at our house. And we knew everybody who was coming, and as soon as they walked into the door, all the phones went into a basket. And then we knew all the kids that were coming, and we divided them into groups. And we had game night and project night, and it was one of the funnest nights ever. And they were all with people they didn't know well. And it helped build a community. But it was intentional. It was proactive. And we tried to carry that over even to services with the kids. Y'all have a very interesting dynamic here. How many are in your high school class?
Around 45.
Good night. That's a church. That's bigger than most churches in Kentucky, right? Your whole church, 45, just in your high school class. That's a great blessing. Are you going to have cliques?
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have to go in proactive, in my opinion. We have to go in proactive. Your best teachers need to be in there, and you need to be ready for cliques, and you need to plan from the very beginning. In fact, it's got to, like at camp, here's how it starts. The instant a kid comes into a cabin, we are on clique combat patrol. Immediately. As soon as they start bringing in their stuff, we are on the lookout of how to make sure we can get everybody together and no one's left behind. And so I think that would be important to keep in mind right from the very beginning, with the way they sit down, the way chairs are arranged, the way the class is communicated and shared, activities in class, maybe group activities, who's working with you, you have to maneuver that and think about it that way, because that is a great blessing. And then with us as parents, we control this messaging. We got a clique problem? Yeah, isn't it great? Our high school class is as big as a church. And we have some kids here who've never been here. Isn't that awesome? Do you know them? No, go get to know them. Anybody here a mean parent like us that anytime you were out of town, you made your kids meet other people? Oh, yeah. Man, isn't that mean? You know, you have to go, they just knew it. You're going to have to meet two other people, tell us about them. You've got to learn to get out of your comfort zone. You've got to learn how to meet others, you know. And I still do that with the kids. I do it with the kids at church. I do it with the kids at camp. Yeah, got to go meet a couple people. Tell me who you met. I'm just going to call on you. Who'd you meet? What'd you find out about them? Usually it's, who'd you meet? What's her name? Where did they go to school? And what's the name of their dog? Because if they're a dog person, they're my kind of people. I want to know dog people. You know, and so we have fun with that. What are their hobbies? Great. And it's interesting how that changes a dynamic real quick. Another thing at camp that we would always do is we had a piece of paper where you had to find people with certain traits. Who's left-handed? Who's been to Disney? Who's petted an alligator? Who's da-da-da-da-da? So you have to go around and meet them and get them to sign that. And immediately you've got interaction and learning people. You know, I think that's just something you got to be proactive about. And it's although still going to go back to your messaging. Back to your messaging. All right, this is a great problem to have, but we need to be willing to name it and let's address it. Yes, ma'am.
I think it's great to do all of those intentional activities, but also as parents to teach our kids to be includers, to be looking, because sometimes the parents and the teachers miss it. So if you can encourage your kids to include, there's a new kid here, or I don't know them, or, you know, I find myself on Sunday mornings with a whole row of 9-year-old girls, and inevitably there's a 9-year-old who's not here. Well, go get that 9-year-old.
Yeah.
Like, it's something you have to teach them. They're not
Sure.
going to learn
Well,
on their own.
and we all have to learn that ourselves, don't we? Just out of curiosity, can you tell me the visitors that you met last Sunday? Anybody go meet any visitors? Isn't that interesting? We expect it of our kids, but not ourselves. Yeah, you know, they're going to be more apt to do it if we're doing it. I think you're exactly right. Yes, sir. Yeah.
I saw a survey done by a minister that was kind of a specialist at growing churches, and he would go visit people about how to meet visitors and meet guests that were coming from the community. He did surveys and he kept the data, and he found that the majority of churches, 97% of churches he surveyed, would identify themselves as being welcoming and friendly. He said, but lots of the churches he walked in, and the first time he came in, no one talked to him as a consultant coming in and doing this. And he said he calls it the phenomenon of the holy huddle. Which means all the little groups are sitting around talking to each other about the game and about the service, whatever they're talking about, but they're talking to each other about it. They're not looking out to see the new faces and to greet those people and say, hey, you know, who are you? Where are you from? How can we help you?
Yeah.
Instead of being like that, but we think that that's being friendly because we're being friendly within ourselves. But it's not the kind of approach that we need to have, so.
Or there hasn't been one church, not one church, have I asked this question, are you friendly, that didn't say, oh yeah, we're very friendly. Not one church. Not one church. But you know how most of us are friendly? You ever been on an elevator? Are you friendly to people? Well, yeah. Hi, how are you? What floor? Okay. Have a good day. Were you friendly? Yeah.
Minimally.
But that's not friendly. Not here. Not at church. No, there's a word in Scripture that gets often forgotten. It's the word hospitality. Anybody know the definition of hospitality? To love strangers. To love the stranger. And who's a stranger? Anybody you do not know. So every Sunday, what do you have all around you? Strangers. And what should we be? Hospitable. So can I, this is just one of my things, little soapbox. We need to bring back the art of hospitality. Using your home as God's resource for all of us to show hospitality to our brethren that we do not know. That will make a big difference on your kids. That's how you change a culture. That's how you help it grow, in my opinion. You bring hospitality. And so you're putting your child in an uncomfortable, who'd you invite over? Oh, bah. How many times will you have to go hide toys? All right, do I have to play with them with this? No, you don't. Can I hide it? Yes, you can hide it. All right, what can we bring out? Okay, anything made of wood and block. Okay, whatever. All right. But they're going to come over and you're going to play together and we're going to get to meet some people. And that should be a part of our life as we grow up. Because generally kids, this is hard, are a microcosm of us. They're a microcosm of us, so if we can get that going, that will help. But I would encourage y'all to remember, this is awesome. 45 to 50, different backgrounds. This is great. You know, what was it like in Acts 2? Now you know. Now you know. Everybody's together. So, yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I will say that as a parent of a special needs child, that the greatest thing that you can teach your child is inclusion.
Yeah.
Because, and I say that because like my son does not have the social skills to go talk to your child without that child initiating conversation. Does that make sense?
Sure. Yeah.
And so he doesn't have cliques. He has people that he is comfortable with.
Sure.
But those people have initiated conversation first because he doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah. And we need to be good with that. That's awesome. Get him in here. That's good. All right. Anybody got anything else on this? Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Please.
Okay, I don't know how to like word this right, but like earlier when you said there were some kids at church or whatever that you knew that your kids didn't need to hang out with, and it was evident now why, and you were right. But how do you know the difference in like maybe they're not going to be good for our kids, but how do you know that in the end you aren't the ones who drove that kid away? You know, I have a hard time
I see what you're saying.
knowing
Yeah.
like I don't think they're good, stay away from them. But what if that child feels that and
Yeah.
they feel that, you know what I mean? And that's what actually drove them away. How do you know when to sacrifice your children
That's a good
for
point.
a greater good?
Yeah. With these kids, I always made sure they got to camp and paid for their camp. I always got them to Teen Challenge. I made sure they were there and made
Okay,
them
so
a
you
part
didn't
of that.
just totally like.
Oh, no.
Because I always worry
No,
about that. I always
because
worry about all the kids.
we got in trouble because, and we had to be very careful. This is a preacher problem.
Okay.
Preachers aren't allowed to have friends. Did y'all know that? They're really not. And I tell anybody who I hang out with on a recreational basis, do not post anything. You're going to get me in trouble. And that's just life. That's fine. And so you have to, because you don't want there to be any kind of jealousy or any kind of frustration. And so even when I had a group of guys, they took me to Colorado for my 50th birthday. I'm like, gotta keep this quiet. This is awesome, but I'm not allowed to have friends, so don't tell anybody. So what we were having to do here is my kids had to hang around every kid and needed to be a part of every kid's life, loving them and guiding them and helping them in all church settings, all camp settings, all Teen Challenge settings, and any times the whole group is together. But when it came to private time, where it was just them and their closest friends, they got to choose that. And of course, I was in on that as well. They didn't realize as much, but I made sure they had good, tight friends. And this other person would have been more than welcome. But the choices that were being made and the attitudes were rebellious. And frankly, I didn't know that there was a desire to be that tight because there were so many differencing attitudes. But we were very mindful that we didn't want to push away their faith. And so I felt like kind of was blamed on us when their children had bigger problems. It was our fault. And so we had to do some soul searching on that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, this kind of goes back to my original premise. I can't go save the world and lose my own kids.
That's what I was wondering.
That's my first mission field.
We've had those situations where I'm like, they're just a child.
Yeah.
How can I judge a child?
Well, but when they become a teenager and they're independent and they're making their own decisions and those things.
It's okay to.
Oh, absolutely. You've got to. You're responsible for that first mission field. Win it. Win it. You need to be as inclusive as you can, but there's certain environments where your children are very, how would you say, impressionable. All right, where you don't have a control in there, and then that's where you've got to be mindful of who is making the impression on the kids. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I just always worry, even like adults my age, I'm like, what if it was different for them when they were younger? What if they, I have a twin
I
sister.
get that. Yeah.
Who's not a member of the church anymore.
Oh, really?
And it was some of that mindset towards her during the high school years that just really honestly just we have different personalities. Mine is just follow the rules, it's gonna be okay, or whatever. Hers is, she felt alienated, excluded. She doesn't want those kind of people. She doesn't believe in God now. And so I always worry about that with other children.
I get it.
You know, like, if they felt part of a bigger, you know, if they felt a little more tight-knit, but how do you do that without sacrificing your kids, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I would love if my sister was a sister in Christ with me.
Mhm. Yeah, I get it. But it still comes back, you gotta win that first mission field. Does that make sense? You know, and I think there even are principles in Scripture where there's, you know, if you look at, you know, Paul speaking to Corinth, there's some brothers you don't need influencing to that. You know, it's catch-22. Yes, sir. Yeah. Sorry. Where am I?
He's gonna let me go.
I won't be married.
Okay. Or she gets to go first? Wise husband.
I struggle with this too, but one thing that I've landed on is you don't get in bed with everybody. And when you have your friends who you interact with, you make memories with, and then you have your best friends. And your best friends are who you are emotionally attached to.
Mhm.
And so when you become emotionally attached to someone who might not be in a healthy emotional state, that's going to affect you. So, as a child, dealing with someone who is going through a lot of emotional stuff, there is a delicacy to getting in bed with that person.
Yeah.
And it's not about judging, it's about boundaries.
Yeah. And you love with boundaries.
And you love with boundaries.
Yeah. Good point. Yes, sir.
I take this to the who's the influenced and who's the influencer.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you run from that person or you distance yourself to where I'm far away. You have to be able to be the influencer and not the influenced. You know, Jesus sat with sinners, but he was the influencer.
That's right. That's
And
right.
so it takes personal strength to be around those, but it also takes the parent to develop that personal strength in your child to be able to be. And if your child is not able to handle that, then who you're quote unquote in bed with is the influencer. And so therefore, I think that those two words are what drive the friends you have, if they're close or associates or whatever. But
And there's no guarantee.
Yeah, there's no guarantee.
that's the same
You know,
with adults.
And with us,
You know.
with this, if they would rise to a desire for spiritual things, they would have been included.
That's right.
You know, there would have been, oh, hey, we need you here, instead of, you know, that's tough in those environments. But I get it. It's a hard one. Yes, ma'am.
Well,
Yeah.
in our particular situation, it was not necessarily, the child wasn't saying, can they come over and play, can they come do this? I don't remember of us saying, no, you can't go. There just was not any, they just didn't,
They,
I don't know that the children wanted to be friends. It was more the parents.
yeah. All right, let's go on to the next one. I'm sorry.
Also,
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Go to your, even though they're in high school, go to the teachers of your kids' classes and ask how they're acting in class. And then if there is a problem and your child is either the victim or the instigator or whatever, that'll put you on the right page as far as, but the teachers probably won't come to you, but if you just go, because I did this to the kids, if you have any problems with our kids, I want to know about it, you know, but just periodically check in with the teachers and say, how's my kid doing in class?
Yes.
And I'd be very aware of my verbiage. I would never, ever, ever use the phrase bad kid.
No. No.
Never, ever would I say that.
Yeah, you don't want to be a self-fulfilling prophecy or
No.
throw that out there. All kids are good kids. Yeah.
No, and
Good
you're
point.
not teaching inclusion, and you can protect your mission field,
Mhm.
but do it with your words.
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
Bill,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
One last-
No, yeah. Sorry.
I knew a Greek family back when I was in college, and they were wonderfully open-handed and giving and generous and all the good things you can think about a family and reaching out to this American kid that didn't know anything. But I learned from them that in Greek, the word for stranger is xenos, xenos. And that's exactly the same word in Greek as the word for guest.
Oh, interesting. Stranger is the guest. Oh, that's good. That's cool. All right, we got 10 minutes to get through like 5 more questions. All right, here we go. How do you strengthen your marriage during, wait, did I skip one? Was there, am I going backwards? Okay. Handle clicks. Oh, did we talk about dating? Okay, how do you handle how do you handle the challenge of dating? You just don't. You don't let them date. That's how you do that. No dating. You'll be fine. Just wait. Wait for the stork and we'll all be good. Here's what I would encourage. You want to talk about anxiety and insecurity? You encourage dating. You want to have challenges? You encourage dating. That's, man, good night. I think that's something we just need to be mindful of. That's a lot of pressure. Now, if they are wanting to date, if there is a strong desire to date, and you feel they are mature enough to date, dates should have boundaries. Big time boundaries. And there's nothing wrong with that. Whether it's a double date, whether it's something that is partially or fully supervised date, or it's a limited excursion or outing date with you tracking, I think you need to be mindful of that. Anybody remember dating? Remember dating? Knowing what you know? You remember you? You know, why would you expect them to be any different? So you need to be very wise with that. Very wise with that. However, what you need to prepare them for is going off to college when they will be dating without you. And so there needs to be some understanding about things and having boundaries. And I think a lot that will help you with this is the influencers your children are hanging around. You watch those friendships closely because your children are going to be the average of the 5 closest kids they hang around. I don't care how great you think your child is. Oh no, my child's the influencer, he's the bomb, or she's the... No, trust me. When they're off on their own, they're the average of who they choose to hang around. So that'll tell you where you are with that. And then be very, very mindful of giving them too much rope. Just because they're good and have never messed up doesn't mean that you allow them to get in positions where they could mess up. You know, and so you need to sit down and just be mindful of those boundaries in those situations. But I personally think, this is just my own personal opinion, we encourage kids to date way too soon. And we build up way too many insecurities, and that just makes life too hard. Let it come natural, and when it does, you know, you have your principles, your boundaries in place that you've discussed. And you're always free to call an audible. Oh, well, that may have been the situation with that person. With this person, you get to date right here on the couch. Sure, invite them over. We'll watch Andy Griffith. It'll be great. You know, but you have to determine those boundaries. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
I want to echo what Scott said about our college students and the influence that they had on me when I was starting to date and thinking about dating. I had witnessed our college students and their dating life and what boyfriend and girlfriend were like. And I had expectations that were higher than my peers did because I had seen godly dating. Yeah. And we have such a resource here. Get them in your homes fast.
Yeah, that's a great point. And they'll be a better teacher than we will be any day. You know, because it looks cool. From hey, they're doing it. That looks cool.
And your kids will listen to them.
They will. They will. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Mm-hmm.
So I am every day I work in middle school, so preteen, teen, like I'm in that world every day. And the main issues and drama that unfold are over relationships. And this is between 11-year-olds and 13-year-olds.
Here's the deal too, when they start dating and have relationships with other kids at church, especially when they were in the high school or college class, I literally went to them, so y'all are going out? All right, here's the deal. When you break up, you are gonna be nice to one another. And you're gonna get along, and you're not, you got me? Oh yeah, Michelle, you got me? Okay, just so we know. I don't quite say it quite like that, but it's like, that's not an option. That's not an option. Because, yeah, you want them to date, but it's part of life. You learn. All right, anything else on that one? That's a fun one. Any of y'all have on dating? God bless you. All right. Preparing teens for adulthood. All right, here's what we think. Here's what we think. When you're preparing your child for adulthood, and this starts really young, I believe it's very important for us not to change the standards as they get older. I think sometimes it's cuter for little kids to dress a certain way, but then when they get older, we say, all right, now you got to go down. Well, that's not fair. I think whatever your standards are, you're going to have a much easier time with it if this is your standard throughout the years. But that's something that needs to be discussed, and they're going to need to see it in you. They're going to need to see your standard in how you dress. And I think that needs to be a discussion. And with our young men, who you choose to date and their modesty standards is going to say a lot about you as well. So that works both ways there. But these need to be conversations that are had. And here's why we do things the way that we do. And here's why things are the way that we are. And it's not always about length. It could be about how tight it is, or revealing it is, or thin it is. You just need to have those conversations and prepare them for that. So they're making their own decisions. And what's going to help you in that is that when you put them around other teens, you put them in group settings where there are more standards aligned with yours, that's going to make it easy because there can be that positive peer pressure that goes with it. Encouraging personal devotion time. Wow, that just needs to be a part of life. We started giving our kids books to read. What is it? Something to wear, something you need, something to read, whatever, you know. They still laugh about that. You know, my parents must think I'm not a Christian. They're always giving me devotional books. You know, no, this is just these are neat books that we've read that we think might be helpful to you. Reading with them certain books is very helpful. When you're modeling this or you have a family book to read together, can be very helpful. But you're wanting them to have a relationship, and so they're going to watch that and see that in you. And then a healthy view of money. Clearly with my daughter working for Dave Ramsey, but we were Dave Ramsey fans long before she started working there. I personally believe that is a must for parents, that you teach your children the envelope system and how to manage money, and you start them as young as you can. Our kids were encouraged to take all their money, and it went into 5 pots. One was savings, one was planned, one was charitable giving, one was just spend as you want, but they had their envelopes, and they had to pay for half their car when we got to that time, and that came from the money that they saved. And so they also had to help pay for other things, but it was to teach them how it's hard money comes in, but how easy it goes out. Yeah, and then learn how to budget. We live in a world that does not know self-control. We live in a world that doesn't understand compounding interest. That's another thing I even show all the kids on campus is, okay, you got some college debt, you don't need to stay in debt. And there's no reason for you not to have a healthy retirement account if you start now and enjoy the blessed privilege of compounding interest over time. But that's going to take self-control and learning how to save money. And that should come from us, so it's modeled in us. And then we definitely got to make them help learn good choices in using the media. And so be very proactive. There's also a lot of good websites that you can use, which is kind of ironic. I'll use a website to learn how to use, but they're out there that can help us set boundaries. And I think these are things that we've got to do to prepare them for adulthood. And then the last thing, and if y'all want to talk about more afterwards, we'll certainly talk to you. I think I got to most of the questions. How do you strengthen your marriage during the teen years? You're going to have to be very deliberate. Because these are just the hard years. They don't go to bed at like 8 like the infants used to do and sleep and give you a few hours. You know, it's just a different world. But while they're your first mission field, your spouse is your first love. Save the Lord. And if you want your children to feel emotionally secure, you love their mom or their dad like you're supposed to. And you need to make that a priority, even in these times. You need to make that a priority in what seems best for you, but you need to slow down and make that happen. Because here's what you got to keep in mind. They're probably going to marry somebody a lot like you. Are you good with that? And with the way you treat their mom, are you going to be good? If that's who they choose to marry, someone who treats your daughter like you treat mom. Does that make sense? So that needs to be a priority, and you don't need to be ashamed of that. You don't need to be ashamed of that. You need some time. Actually, what you need a lot of is a lot of sit-down coffee time, or to drink and talk time, and plan time, because you'll be able to enjoy time together if you feel like you got at least a plan for some of these problems. You can't solve them all, but that'll make it a lot easier. So, cool. All right. Yes, sir. Yeah.
When my wife and I first got married, the older couples in the church gave us little slips of paper with advice. And one of those pieces of paper said, when your kids are all gone, your relationship with your spouse is going to continue.
Yeah.
So don't forget that while your kids are at home, to be developing that relationship as well.
Yeah. That's true. And here's the deal, folks. The harder it is with our kids, the harder the battle may be. Don't let Satan take more than he's already taken. Don't let that bleed over into your relationship with your spouse. Y'all have got to be united front together. And so you've got to remember that, if nothing else, for the sake of your kids. Your children need you together. And that never, ever, 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 ever goes away. Your children need to know you're good. Because that gives them a foundation. All right? And so don't be afraid to invest maybe a little more time in that as well. Okay? That's important to them. All right? Because you want them to see what love's supposed to be like. Right? And that you're able to show them healthy, how would you say, not conflict's not the word I wanted, but you're a healthy relationship, that you're able to handle challenges and still love one another fiercely. Does that make sense? How you handle it and you love them. All right. Anything else? If I did not, I think I got to all the questions. I know there were a couple that were handed to me last night, and I definitely want to deal with those one-on-one. But if you've got anything that we can help you just kind of reason through, let us know. And again, on behalf of Cheryl, thank you for even wanting to hear our opinions. But again, these are just our opinions. You know, you got to do you. And we are definitely not the role model for parenting. We're still in the fight as well. And so she reminds me of that all the time. Don't you jinx this for us. You just shut up. You know, so that's right. So that's what I do. You know, but thank y'all. Thank y'all very, very much. And thanks for your desire to talk about these things. This is healthy. This is good. I wish more churches would just get together and let's just talk about because our kids, there's no greater treasure than that, right? And when your kids are good, life is good. Life is good. All right. Anybody else? All right. You want to lead us in prayer?
Absolutely. Our Heavenly Father, we're so thankful for the good time that we've had here today to be able to talk about the precious assets of our children. Thank you, Father, so much, first of all, for Phil and Cheryl, for the two people that they are, strong brothers and sisters dedicated to serving you. And Father, obviously part of that dedication in their service to you is helping others. And we thank you for what they have brought here today, for the genuineness of it, for the love that they have for all here. Thank you so much, Father, for the families here at Lost River, for the wonderful teenagers that we have. We thank you for the concern that the parents have here for their children, for their desire to see them to grow up loving you and being shining examples in the world. Help us, Father, to realize that we don't have all of the answers and that we should be given in prayer to you, that we should be trusting in our brothers and sisters, and that we should seek wisdom together with all of those things, Father, as husband and wife together, making good decisions for the direction of our children. Help us to be role models for them, as Phil has talked about. Help us to practice unity, to practice love, to practice kindness. And let not only our children, but the world see, Father, that it is our desire to glorify you in all that we do. Again, Father, thank you so much for this time that we've had together to discuss your will. Bless us and bless our children. It's in our Savior's name we pray. Amen.
Amen.